Kleshas. If we're going to use samyama as the tool, what is it that we're going to do with that tool? Recall at the very beginning of our conversations here, we talked about the meaning of yoga as yogesh chitta vritti nirodha had something to do with setting aside all of the false identities in the mind field. And then came the awareness of the drashtu, the seer, the witness, the observer who's doing all this, and that stands in its own nature, and that's called self-realization, most commonly. There's a principle then that's very important that is called the 5 kleshas. The 5 kleshas, the word klesha can most easily be understood as coloring. If there's a particular snack food that you enjoy, sometimes we playfully use as an example a donut. If there's a particular flavor of donut that you like a lot, you have a memory trace of that donut or that apple, if you want to have a nice health food, that you remember that. And so all of a sudden your friend says, hey, let's go to the donut store and get a donut. And what kind of donut do you want to get? And they say, well, let's go get a red jelly-filled donut. And that happens to be your favorite. So you say, okay, let's go get a red jelly-filled donut. What just happened in the mind? There is a memory trace in the deep unconscious of the donuts. Example of memory when I say that, if you are in deep sleep at night, you're laying in bed, you're in deep sleep, no dreaming, what happens to your memory of donuts? Your donut memory has fallen asleep too. But then during the day when your friend says, donut, it awakens from the deep unconscious and it stirs and it comes forward in your mind and you go, yes, I remember donut. That's yummy. Let's go get one. Well, why, when that donut suggestion came to mind, why did you respond to it? Because in the deep unconscious, in the latent unconscious, your memory trace of that particular kind of donut is, so to speak, colored with past experience that I have enjoyed that. If there's another flavor of donut or another food that you just don't like, it just doesn't excite you, and your friend says, what would you think about a so-and-so donut? There's no reaction, because in the latent field of mind, it's not colored. So a memory trace can be either klishta or aklishta. It can be colored or not colored. And in yoga, in Ashtanga Yoga, in the other portions that are outside of the literal 8 rungs, it is described that there are generally 5 kinds or categories of kleshas. And they are avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. Gradually, over time, we want to learn those principles because they are part of the practice. As we talked before, any field of inquiry and practice has its own language, and we want to know about that. So avidya has something to do with basically forgetting our true nature. It's in the metaphor of the ocean and being a wave in the ocean. We forget that we are the ocean. There's a forgetting process. We just literally forget that we are the ocean, and then arises the second klesha, which is asmita, which is usually translated as ego, but it means I-ness, it means individuation. The wave is actually one with the ocean, but somehow a forgetting process happens, and that's the avidya, and there arises the concept or experience of individuation as being separate from the ocean. And that is the meaning of asmita. And so it itself is a coloring. And then the third one is raga, which means attachment or attraction. And we do this constantly from birth. From birth, we are given identities. When you're born, parents give us a name and say, your name is so-and-so. And you hear this over and over and over. You do this if you're training your puppy dog. Your puppy dog gradually learns to respond to his name. And we learn that. So we have taken that on as an attraction or as an attachment. And then We have experiences in life throughout growing up, and many of those experiences we come to know what we like. And those end up becoming memory traces that end up with, I like donuts, for example. And we go to school and we say, if there's a mascot of your school, it happens maybe in the first few years of school. You know, my school is called the Eagles or something like that. So then you say, well, I'm an eagle. We take on these identities, and there are, we could almost say virtually countless identities of those. And so those are the ragas, klesha number 3. Klesha number 4 is dvesha, and it is what I don't like. So I may like this donut, but that other donut I just don't like, or some other food I really push away. I resist that. We do this with people. There's some people that we know that we really like, and there's others that we don't like. So we end up with a phenomenon that's something like this. We have ragas that we pull towards us that either are me or are related to me. It is me or mine. And we have other things, people, donuts, that are not me and are not mine. I like this, I don't like this. This is me, this is not me. I am from this country, therefore I am a so-and-so, but I am not from that country, therefore I am not that. And we do this constantly. And the 5th klesha then is because what we are doing in our unconscious memory traces, we are constructing an identity that ends up being called me. This is me. I am this and I'm not this, and all of those together define somebody called me. And the 5th klesha is called abhinivesha, which means fear. It doesn't mean, like ultra dangerous, the bad guy is chasing me and I'm having a nightmare kind of fear. It doesn't mean that kind of fear necessarily. Or we could say it's like a concern. It's we don't want to lose our identities. It's as if we have built, symbolically speaking, we have built a house of cards. You take a deck of cards, you build a house of cards with your identities of this and this. All of these together build a house of cards that is my personality, that is me. And all of this is collectively going on in the deep unconscious. And we don't want that to be threatened. We don't want an external person to threaten this. Yet if you think about this, you'll realize you already know this. This is very practical, down-to-earth information. And then we resist any threat to that. And we don't want it to fall away. So we have avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. Again, what it means, this is a concept that yoga is introducing. What it means is I have forgotten that my true nature is ocean, or pure consciousness, pure joy, pure ananda, pure bliss. I have forgotten that. And then arises I-ness, and then that I-ness itself starts to define itself on the basis of the many versions of I am this, and the many versions of I am not that, and that I like this and I don't like that. And that's based on experience of living. And then finally is abhinivesha, which can be approximately called fear of holding on, the fear of the loss of this identity as me. And this is the kleshas. And then much of the rest of what we're doing has to do with these kleshas. And this is what, in the early sutra, when we talked about the principle of nirodha, this is what we're trying to temporarily let go of in our meditation. Klesha.